Hey, I am a revision geek and I want you to come and join my revision geek world. Welcome to the Diaries of a Revision Geek. I cannot wait for you to watch these interviews. They are so super fun. I've got qualified accountants together talking about their revision journeys, the highs, the lows, the struggles, and all the things in between about how other people got their plaque up on the wall and how they got qualified. I've picked qualified accountants in my LinkedIn network on purpose to help and support you guys, to inspire and motivate you if you are on your accounting journey. Feel free to like and subscribe below for more. Just click on the icons and I will keep you up to date with the Diaries of a Revision Geek. Let's get started. Here I am with Ben today. I have no idea what Ben's revision journey is like, so feel free to introduce yourself for us, Ben.
Hi, my name's Ben Wilson. I'm now an advanced auditing tutor. I work with a company called FME, where we provide kind of personalised tutoring services to students. But I also work with the ACCA as their expert tutor for auditing papers. You just saw my dog Bella, who was sat nicely and then just disappeared. I also do lots of other random bits of training stuff. So I work with the London School of Economics as their head tutor for executive education programs. I also do equity analyst training for the Bank of America. So I have lots of different bits and pieces I do all around accountancy training, basically.
Very exciting. We will come on to that as well. But first off, let's talk about your revision journey. So what qualification have you got?
Okay, so I did the ICAW qualification. So I'm ACA. I'm now FCA, which makes me feel really old.
Yeah, you are really old.
And that came through. I was kind of half proud and half like, oh, ancient.
Yeah. You get a degree certificate for your FCA.
Oh, yeah. And it's big. Yeah, and it's sat in a cupboard somewhere. I don't know. I feel a little bit. I can see you've got yours. Like you've got yours there. I'm a little bit more. I don't know. I feel a bit weird putting it up, so I haven't got it up. Although I am very proud of it.
Yeah, I am a very proud revision geek with my CIMA plaque. I show that off all the time. If anybody watches any of my videos, it's always there. But yeah, great to have you. Oh my god. Thanks. I'm excited. You're our first ACA male of our revision geek, so it'll be interesting to see what your journey is like. So feel free, have the floor. Tell us about your revision journey. What
Sure.
was it like?
Well, I'm the bog standard ACA person in the UK. So I finished university, didn't know what to do. And I'd done a biology degree, so absolutely nothing to do with finance or accounting. And I got to the end of that, realized I didn't want to work in research science. I had a miserable year actually doing that. I hated it as a job, loved it as a subject to study. So I needed a job, and I wanted a job that was going to open career doors for me. So I joined KPMG in audit. The reason I did that is because my best mate's dad is a qualified accountant and he set up a really successful consultancy business, LEK Consulting. He's the E in LEK, and that's what he did. He finished uni and then went and became a qualified accountant, and then went off and just had this really successful career in business. And his pitch, I mean, I asked him for careers advice. His pitch was, if you get this qualification, you'll learn a load about business and it will open doors for you. You don't have to be a kind of, I don't know, an accountant to have, but after you do your qualification, there'll be loads of other things you can do. So I joined KPMG. I spent 4 years there where they pay for your training, and you're really lucky with ACA. They give you time off as well. So I had a great time at college. We used to have like 3 months. We'd go to college over the summer, quite intense because you kind of did. One summer I did 4 exam papers, studying them all together, and then straight into revision, and then straight into doing all 4 of those exams. So it was intense, but I was in a group of 30 of my mates, basically, where instead of having to go to work, we got paid to go to college. It was amazing. So I had a really fun 3 years I loved doing the studying. I didn't enjoy the work at all as an auditor. And I think that's quite a common story. I kind of went on my first audit thinking, oh, they're going to be really pleased to see us because we're going to give them advice on how to run their business better. And then you go and ask, I don't know, an elderly or aging credit controller for some invoices or something, and they don't even look at you. They're like, come back later, I'm busy. You're just bothering me. And I hated that feeling.
You get put into a room as well, special audit room, you know.
Oh, I mean, the best one I had for that. So I used to audit TUI Travel, or at the time it was First Choice Travel. There's big UK holiday company. They're based at Gatwick Airport. And their building is quite nice and shiny. And they had this little kind of shack outside, which was just at the end of the runway at Gatwick. And that was the audit room. And so every 90 seconds, that's how often a plane takes off from Gatwick, the whole room would shake because there's a plane coming over, and you'd sit there going, please don't let this be the one that hits us. So that was a pretty low point of my auditing. But anyway, I didn't really enjoy audit, but I loved the study. And actually, when I was at college, there were a couple of tutors who I looked at who were just having a great time. You know, they're teaching, it's a job, but actually they're just really enjoying themselves. And I thought I'd love to do that. And I was really lucky when I studied, one of the tutors, and I think this is the typical thing. So I joined Kaplan after I qualified. Typical thing that happens there is you kind of look at your classes of students and go, has any of them got kind of tutor potential? And they must have seen something in me because they tapped me up to say, would you fancy doing this? And I was very, very happy to join and start doing that.
Good, that's so good. I've got some questions already. So okay. Going from biology to accounting might seem a little bit weird, but I would say, there's a lot of people that do accounting without an accounting or business studies style degree at uni, probably like 50-50 from my experience. You know, I do have a business studies degree, but biology, as you can obviously, it didn't work. The job didn't work for you.
No, I love the subject, but I mean, the year I spent in research science, I found really dull. And we were working on cancer research, so it's fantastically interesting and valuable stuff. But you're doing things that, you know, it's such a slow process, research science, that the stuff I was doing then, which is like 25 years ago, is now coming into use. And those sort of timescales for me as a kind of bright-eyed 18-year-old, want to do everything now, that just, it just didn't really work for me.
So your decision to choose accounting was that mainly from your friend, that colleague?
Yeah, so my best mate at uni, that it came from his dad, and actually 2 or 3 of the guys. So I used to play in the golf team at uni, and a lot of the guys in the years above me, when they finished uni, a lot of them went to work for Big Four firms. And so it was a kind of, I'd had the advice from my friend's dad. I had friends who were already doing it, so I kind of knew what it was going to be like, making an informed choice. And it was like doing that is almost like kicking the can down the road for 3 years. You're not really making a career decision. You're not deciding you're always going to be an auditor if you join a Big Four firm. You're kind of going, I'm going to spend 3 years getting another qualification that's almost like doing uni again, of like, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but this is going to be useful while I'm on my way to finding out. And
you get paid a little bit for it, right?
Yeah, and the pay was decent. You know, I was working in London. I had enough money to, be able to have a jolly life while I was there. So
I've never worked for a top 4 or anything. It wouldn't be one of my first things like, oh, I want to do that. So what was that? I'm guessing were you on a graduate scheme? Did you have like a study? You were a full-on trainee. You weren't just someone doing a job and studying. It was more like that was half of your job, I imagine, as a graduate scheme.
Yeah.
What was that like as a
classic grad program? So first week there were, I think, KPMG, the year that I joined, they recruited something like 250 new starters for London and the rest of the country. So in London, there were about maybe 150 of us, and they sent us all away on a 2-week residential to basically get to know each other, find out about the firm, and I mean, frankly, just have a good time for a couple of weeks. It was a great first couple of weeks. And then it was a really structured 3-year program. So like year 1 and year 2, you would have defined blocks where you were at college studying. And then you'd have an exam at the end of that period. And then you'd go back to work for a couple of months. And then your next exam block would come up. So it was really like exams, study for a while, do an exam, and then work for a few months, and then go back and do more study. And I quite liked that, because by the time I got bored of studying, I was going back to work. And by the time I got bored of working, well, I was going back to doing some studying. I never had to do, so one of the things I really admire about a lot of the ACCA students that I work with is this, they have to juggle work and study at the same time. I never really had to do that.
You make it feel very easy and structured, and someone gave you the structure. You didn't even have to pick it yourself.
I didn't have to pick it myself at all. I mean, there were downsides though. I mean, if you failed an exam, you got the sack.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. That's the one thing I've heard the most, you know, yeah.
So it's pressured.
Yeah.
But I don't know, as long as you're doing reasonably, and there's no so this is going to sound really arrogant, but there's no reason to fail. If you're being given 2 months off work to study, and you put the work in, you should pass the exam. And if not, you're probably
oh, we just said the S word. We don't like the S word around here. You shouldn't do anything. I see what you mean. I think, am I right in thinking it's because of the time off you had that gives you that belief more than working?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. So having been given all of the support, so KPMG gave us time off and were paying for us to go to a top training provider to get loads of coaching to help us to pass the exam. The people who didn't pass and did get the chop were either people who did absolutely no work, or people who perhaps weren't in the right job to start off with, and it wasn't them. And actually, it sounds dreadful, they got sacked, but actually there were very few, and the ones who did were like, do you know what, I didn't really want to do this anyway, and this has helped me to realize this wasn't right for me.
And was it just a one chance, one fail, and then you're out, or was there like a 2 or a?
It depended how hard your fail was. So the pass mark for the ICAW exams at the lower level is 55%. So if you narrowly failed, I think it might be 45 to 55, then you got a second chance. If you hard failed below 45, you got the sack. But you only got 1 second chance. So if you failed a second paper narrowly, that was it, you were out.
And did that pressure work well for you? Did that motivate you, or did that motivate you?
It definitely worried me at first, and it probably made me work a bit harder. I don't know, I worked pretty hard anyway. So my kind of study journey, I did well in my 16-year-old exams in the UK, GCSEs. I did really well in those without doing much work, and that made me incredibly arrogant and lazy. And so for my A levels, I didn't do any work, and I didn't do very well in them. I was very lucky in that the university I'd got an offer from gave me an unconditional offer. So I didn't have to get certain grades to get into my university. But at 18, I can still remember it really clearly, opening up that results envelope and getting grades that were like several grades below what I feel like I could have achieved. And that experience from that point onwards made me work really hard. So in my degree, you don't have to, for a lot of degrees at university, you don't have to do very much and you can kind of coast through. I didn't do that at all. I worked really hard. I got a first in my degree, and all the way through my accountancy exams, it was always in the back of my mind, that experience that I'd had of not achieving what I could have done motivated me to work harder for my ICAW exams. So I worked hard for all of them. Did I work harder because I could have got the sack? Maybe a little bit. It was probably more for me was that I was in a group, there were 30 of us who did all of our studies together. And more of a motivating factor was I didn't want to be the one that didn't do well out of that group.
Yeah.
A kind of peer, and there was no one else putting pressure on me other than myself. But I wouldn't want to be the one who didn't get through. So that probably motivated me as well.
That's good. I just think it's an interesting journey, right? That I don't know how, I'm assuming KPMG don't take that many graduates anymore. I don't know why I'm assuming that, but I just feel like they might have?
No, so the big four this year are recruiting massively. So audit particularly, I mean, this is going slightly off topic, but because of, so there's massively more regulation coming in to the audit sector, and all of these scandals like Carillion and Wirecard, the big four audit firms are all being basically sued for negligent auditing that they did kind of 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so what they're now doing is doing way more work when they do their audits, which means they need more staff to do it. So actually they're all recruiting massively. So yeah, I would say, so KPMG will be recruiting similar, if not more than that at the minute.
So if somebody's listening to this and thinking, oh, that interests me, would you have any advice for if that interests someone, how would they be good at that? I guess like having that structure and support. It sounds like there's a college support system and a work support system. If that motivates you, or if you need that, then I guess that's a good thing. Is there any other advice?
Yeah. So the big four they take on loads of new employees, but it's quite competitive, and they're all really strict on you. You need to have got these grades, you need to have got this degree, and so that's not open to everyone. But the kind of so when I was at Kaplan, I ended up running Kaplan's business in the Northeast. I ran the Leeds, Hull, Sheffield, and Newcastle offices, and I used to work a lot with mid-tier practices and smaller local practices. And actually the experience that the students got there was way more supportive, and they got a much more varied range of work that they did. You know, I worked in a really narrow sector and worked on massive company audits, which meant as a junior, if you'd have asked me what's going on in the wider TUI travel business, I'd have had no idea, because I worked on one tiny little bit of it as a junior auditor on a massive audit. Actually going to work at a mid-tier firm or a smaller practice, you will really understand the business as you go and audit. You will be adding value with advice, and you get the same qualification. Right? So at the end of it, you get the same ACA, which opens the same career doors for you as had you got it from PwC or Deloitte.
And you would, my assumption on that is you would be able to answer your professional papers with a scenario-based application in slightly more open context, because you've seen more scenarios or heard of more than just your little window, what you had. Yeah,
completely agree with that. Yeah.
Cool. So one of the things that I talk about a lot for my students and potential students is to have a revision plan. So we've talked about your structure quite a lot, but did you have a revision plan given to you, or did you create one yourself?
No, we were structured in terms of, you had these days at college where the Kaplan tutor for us would, we're going to do these topics today and practice these questions and set you some homework. But you also had, like, but your evenings, your weekends, and perhaps the time off, I was used to book a couple of extra days of holiday so that I could, really drill exam questions before the exam. So I would, although I got support, you did make your own revision schedule of stuff you would do outside of it. So I used to chunk my time, really chunk my time. So I had to commute for about an hour to get to where I was studying. So I had an hour there and an hour back. And I would plan out which questions I was going to do or what study I was going to do on the train there and on the train back. And it actually was quite nice because it makes the journey go quickly if you're so that commuting time wasn't dead time for me. It was, I'm going to do an activity, then I'd get home and you need a break. I'd been at college all day, so you can't then come home and just nail questions all evening.
I'm glad you said that. You made it sound like you were going to go straight into it again.
No, definitely not. So break, food, some sort of physical activity. So I find that I study best when my body is, mind and body working together, right? So if you're the month before the exam, all you do is study and you don't do any exercise, then your ability to kind of take stuff in and properly do questions and learn from them is greatly reduced. So I'd always do some sort of physical activity, go for a walk. I love playing golf, so I might play 9 holes of golf or a few holes of golf, or just go to the driving range for half an hour. And then I'd have a couple of hours afterwards where I'd do study. At that time, I think you've got to know your own rhythms, right? At that time, I used to study best in the evenings, and I felt I was most productive. So I'd quite often stay up late. As I've got older, and where so when I'm teaching, so when I was at Kaplan, I used to, so I specialize in auditing papers, but I've taught basically every ACCA exam, CIMA, other than tax. I've taught pretty much every ACCA, ICAW and CIMA exam at some point, because in a regional centre, and particularly when I was running it, it'd be like, oh, we need someone to teach strategic case study for CIMA, or we need someone to teach advanced financial management for ACCA, or whatever random paper for ICAW, and you can't find anyone, and buck stops with you. So I'd end up picking up loads of random papers. So I'd have to study, though, to be able to, stand up and lecture advanced financial management. You can't just open the textbook and start doing it. You've got to do it yourself first. So I found as I got older and I was studying those papers and effectively revising for them so that I could then teach them. I found that I actually, as I've got older, way more productive in the mornings. So I'd get up at 5 and study in the morning and then have my evenings off as a break. Which is strange. I've completely reversed how I have done that as I've got older.
Yeah, I would say I've reversed mine as well. I was better in the mornings, now much better at like 9-10 p.m. in the evening now. Yeah,
sure. But that's about understanding yourself, isn't it? Yeah. Your own body, your own rhythms, and how you work.
And that's one of the reasons why I did want to record so many diaries of Revision Geek and ask so many people what their revision journey is, so that people can listen, soak it in, and realise that everybody's different. But the most successful journeys are when you do know yourself and you do just what you want to do and what works for you. It really is important, guys, if you're listening and be like, what bits can I take out of each of these Revision Geek journeys that work for me, and try it, and the ones that work for you, keep going. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Another topic I want to talk to you about is I'm not really a fan of this word, but it resonates with lots of people. So like imposter syndrome, or the words and stories you were telling yourself, basically. So when you were going through that, like, if there was any doubts, what did you do or say to yourself to pick yourself up or motivate yourself, boost your confidence?
Yeah, so I mean, the big doubt for me was having had that setback when I was 18 and like flunking those exams. It's always in the back of my mind, that little voice saying, you can't do this. And I guess for me, it was understanding why that had happened. And frankly, it's because I was a lazy, arrogant little so and I didn't do enough work. But that's not always going to be the case for everyone. It might be that you weren't doing the right kind of work. I work with loads of advanced auditing students who have failed elsewhere, but they've worked hard. And the reason they failed is because they're doing the wrong sort of things to prepare them for the exam. So it's kind of identifying, is it that you're not working hard enough or you're doing the wrong things? But yeah, what I do to kind of motivate myself is think about when I have been successful. So, I had that bad experience, but I did do well in my 16-year-old exams, and I'm still incredibly proud of. I got a first in my degree, and I can remember that feeling of getting my degree. Actually, it wasn't opening degree. It was, you had to like queue up and basically go into this building where they put everyone's names were up on a wall, and you had to. So there's a mark of like, how confident were you? Did you look at the top and go down, or did you start at the bottom and look up? And I guess this is my arrogance again. I started at the top and looked up. My name was where I wanted it to be, and So I guess, what do you draw on for kind of, I don't know, moral courage or like motivation? Well, I try and think about those positive experiences that I did do well there. I can do well again.
And that's great. And it is about the words and the stories you tell yourself, and not bringing in the positives, for sure. So do you think you consciously had to do that while you were qualifying, or was that just, it's easy to say now in hindsight, right? Would you think you did anything consciously?
I definitely did that. Definitely. Particularly in the, like, going, those like, the day of the exam, right? So I did my final. I can remember my finals really well. It was a really sweltering summer, and that we were all in this big exam hall in It's like the Royal Horticultural Halls in London. It's basically a big greenhouse where we all sat and did our exams. It was incredibly hot. And because you're being risk averse on the day of your exam, you're going to get there early, right? So everyone arrives like an hour early. I can remember the girl who was sat next to me in my case study paper was wearing a bikini top because it was so hot in that room that you're like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, that hour beforehand, you're just full of self-doubt. It doesn't matter how well prepared you are. You nervously go, oh, I just want to get in there, and what could go wrong, and you can't do any productive study at that point. So I can remember that feeling of the day of the exam and the hour beforehand. And what I wish I'd done, and I didn't, is have a kind of a constructive activity I'm going to do for that hour. So I'm going to get there an hour before because I don't want to be late. But then I'm going to go for a walk from here to here and do this, have an activity rather than just standing around and getting stressed with everyone else.
And not an ACA activity.
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean, what can you do that's by that point, you should be ready right now before the exam. Don't be doing anything to do with the exam. You've got to be doing something that takes your mind off it and makes you fresh. So for me, that should have been doing some exercise. I said that word should again.
I do remember sitting in my car with my books. I think it was just that silly reading, as in like, well, I have to do something with my brain. I would definitely pick something different to do with my brain instead of reading. Because reading CIMA stuff, because I want my brain to be as optimized as possible on when the exam started, not an hour before in the car.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. So obviously I'm a coach, you're a tutor. We don't want to sound biased in the next piece of our conversation, but I'm interested to talk about how a tutor and a coach can support the qualifying accountants listening, obviously. And again, like, we are coaches and tutors. I'm not going to lie, I'm interviewing you for a reason. And so you've said that you your tutors worked really well for you, and you went straight into Kaplan, picked you up, and you've been a tutor kind of ever since, or in the teaching space. So, what advice would you give a qualifying student listening, especially if they don't have, if they're trying to self-study on their own right now? What can they do? What options could work for them?
Well, I work with most of the students I work with now who do my AAA course are independent students who are having to balance work and study at the same time. Lots of them have trained with another provider and it hasn't worked out for them, and they want to go for a more kind of personalized approach with me. And the thing I find that, like, sort of a general point around most of my students is loads of them lack self-confidence and they don't feel like they're doing the right thing. And often one of the things I really like about the support I give is, they WhatsApp me when they've got a question and I answer them straight away. And they're like, oh, now I can carry on studying. I guess the advice kind of out of that is get support. Now, it doesn't have to be from someone like me. It can be from another student or a study buddy, where you can just bounce ideas of each other. You're not doing the wrong thing. Carry on, keep going. That sort of motivational piece. And I guess a lot of students get that from you as well, Helen. That it's not rocket science, but everyone has lows, and having someone to pick you up and to help you to kind of get back on track is really helpful.
Yeah, I talk about confidence nearly every day, boosting your confidence and just your self-confidence. Like, I work a lot on supporting my clients and giving them accountability. So I don't necessarily teach them or lead them and say, you have to do this. I try and get them to lead their revision journey specifically. And I'm there to help and support and give frameworks along the way and just make people accountable to, the thing is, you guys, you started your CIMA, ACA, ACCA for a reason. We just want you to finish it. Like, that's what I'm here for. I just want you to start what you finished because of the amazing rewards we know it brings you. But because you started it, this is a choice. This isn't just your GCSEs, and it's worth it. The plaques is worth it after the pain of the exams, because we all go through the pain. But yeah, confidence is a really important part of the journey.
Yeah, I find it particularly when someone has failed several times, So I worked with a lady earlier this year who had been trying to pass the AAA exam for 2.5 years. I think she'd failed it 6 or 7 times, and then had a break and then come back and failed it again. And she just was like, I'm so close to the end, because for her, AAA was her last paper, but I just can't get there. And I worked really closely with her, lots of marking, lots of answering her questions, giving lots of moral support and that motivation piece you're talking about. And when she passed, I was as thrilled as she was. It was amazing. And she was like, this is like genuinely life-changing. I've had this thing hanging over me for what feels like forever. And all of a sudden, now I've got my ACCA, all of these career doors are open to me. I want to travel with the qualification, and I can, because now I'm ACCA qualified.
Yeah, there's a phrase, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but if you keep doing the things over and over, you'll just keep making the same mistakes. You have to do something different to make a change difference, right?
Yeah.
Like, she was probably, you would assume, doing the same style of revision every time and just thought, I just need to keep going and do more, keep going, or do more questions maybe. But if you keep continuing practicing questions in the wrong way, you're going to get the wrong answer, right? So it's about making a change, so if you have sat your exam a couple of times, then make a change. We've got revision resources out there to help and support you.
And if it didn't work last time, why would repeating the same approach next time, why would it be any different? If you feel like, I was just unlucky, you've probably missed the point. You've got to, that's outside, you can't say it was bad luck on the questions, right? You've got to say, look at what's within your control. How could you be more skilled at that exam, so that if you do get harder questions or something you're not prepared for comes up, that you can still cope with it?
And there's change. I think if you failed more than a few times, then you need to make a change, basically a change in exam technique or the way you're recalling the knowledge. So I said to one of my potential clients last week, I said, I think she'd got 95 in her CIMA exam, and I said, I'm going to coach you on how to answer a question on that topic. I don't want you to just regurgitate the whole book. I don't care about gearing. I care about you answering a question on that topic successfully. That's exam technique. So a lot of students do come to me, a lot of researchers come to me on purpose. So, and then I do have to transform them and switch their mindset a little bit. Mindset with confidence, but also with exam technique. Like, let's answer a question on that topic, not just talk about the topic. Regurgitate the book. Please don't do that, guys.
that reflects the way that a lot of students are taught. So I do a lot of train the trainer work for ACCA, and we work particularly with tutors in overseas markets. And an unbelievable number of tutors teach a subject by basically reading out the textbook and talking around it at length. So I don't know, they're teaching Porter's 5 Forces or something, and they're talking about the history of Michael Porter and what he did in his career, and then like loads of detail about it. And but you haven't looked at a company yet, or a scenario, or an exam question about Porter's 5 Forces, and looked at applying that knowledge. So I think a lot of the time, particularly with students in different markets, overseas markets, it's that their lecturers are kind of almost promoting them to learn the subject, like memorize the textbook, without really applying it to exam questions. And for all the qualifications we've been talking about, so I teach all of them, CIMA, ACCA, ICAW, they're all about exam application. They're not about rote learning and regurgitating what you've memorized. It's about applying it to exam questions. So like the knowledge is necessary, but not sufficient to pass the exam.
Yeah, for sure. And especially at the higher levels, professional level, strategic level, like, and the case studies, the CIMA case studies, you need to apply to the scenario or you won't get a mark. I don't want to know everything about Porter's 5 Forces, no. And the CIMA multiple choice question won't ask you everything about Porter's 5 Forces either. So if you're listening, guys, make a little change to that one. But that's what we're here for, right? Like, without being arrogant, we know how to pass exams. We've done it. We've coached or taught hundreds of students. We're learning every time we have a new student as well, for sure, and we're changing with the times. Obviously, I qualified 9 years ago, qualified a bit longer than that, but things have changed. But we're still, we know how to get you to pass your exam, right?
Yeah, but you know, things are changing. You know, my AAA exam is changing quite significantly. There's loads of professional skills marks coming into it from September 22. And I teach way more with technology now than I ever did. You know, when I first started teaching, it was in a classroom with an overhead projector, and you'd write on it in fancy felt tip pen. And I now spend my time, so this afternoon I've been creating H5P videos, which are interactive videos with, you know, you do a little bit of stuff, it stops and a question appears, and the student has to answer that question to be able to progress on to the next bit of the video, or click on this link and it will open up a document for you, or something from a company's website, or plays a YouTube video. But I'm building like an interactive video experience for a student to, for a topic that in the past I would have stood there and drawn a picture at the front of the classroom. But actually it's what, like, I find that like motivating to do, because I'm learning a new skill. And trying to be creative in the way that I'm thinking about, well, what's the student's journey here going to be like? How are they best going to be? You know, is a 15-minute video of me just talking going to be interesting? Probably not. But if it's me talking a little bit and then them having to do a bit of an activity before they get on to the next bit, well, they're not asleep if they're having to click and engage and do. Yeah.
It's an important part of learning as well, a variety of options of how to do it, not just the book.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Oh, it's so good to interview you, Ben. So there's just a few questions I'm asking everybody. So back to your revision journey a little bit. So when you first started, what opportunities did you hope and think would come from becoming qualified accountant? Yeah,
well, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I did the ACA qualification as a way of deferring a career decision, basically. And I thought, I'm going to go around all these companies and I'm going to see a job that I love. Right. So my audit clients were, I've already mentioned TUI Travel, First Choice, the holiday group. I also worked on the BBC audit. So I used to spend a month of the year at the BBC. I worked on a big, they were an ex-Empire company. They're called Swire. They own Cathay Pacific, and they own loads of shipping. I worked on a market research agency that was owned by a journalist. Anyway, a real range of clients. Yeah. All of them, I never went and saw anyone's job and thought, I want to be doing that. They all looked like they were bored. And I don't know, there's none of them, except when I was at college. And a couple of my tutors looked like they were having the time of their lives. And they weren't faking it. They were genuinely really enjoying themselves. And I just thought, you know, if I could do a job where I actually have fun all day, I'm going to look forward to going to work. You know, work isn't work if you're enjoying it. And it has turned out like that for me. I absolutely love lecturing. And you know, it's totally different from when I started doing it. You know, I'm no longer in a classroom with 30, 20-somethings. I'm now online, but I still really enjoy it. It's a different challenge. But I actually now, I know my students way better than I did when I was teaching in the classroom. So, you know, the gobby ones would ask a question and you get to know them a little bit and there'd be some engagement and interaction with them. But, you know, 3/4 of the students in the class never would say anything to you and just sit there and do their work and leave at the end of the day. Whereas in my online classes, they've all got my phone number and all of them engage and interact with me in different ways. You know, some ask loads of questions, some ask technical questions, some want motivation, but they have this kind of, I don't know, it's almost like a barrier is completely broken down. You know, lots of those students who were quiet in the class may have wanted to ask a question, but would feel the pressure of other people. Don't want to look silly. I don't want to feel stupid, or I just want to go home. So if I ask this guy a question, I'm going to be even later. So I know, and I get so much more on like exam results day. ACCA, for whatever reason, I mean, it's funny, like madness, they release the results at midnight, right? So the students get their text message at midnight UK time, or whatever time it is around the rest of the world, and they all get in touch with me. So I'm normally up until like 4 a.m. because I really care and I really want to know, and I'm like, you know, great, or you know, let's think about next steps. Let's book a call in for tomorrow or whatever. but yeah, I'm way more way closer to the students now in this online world than I ever was with my classroom students.
Well, I would say there's a lot more options for learning for qualifying accountants now than when we had. I only had Kaplan or BPP options. I did choose BPP, but that was it. Now there's so many and there's so much variety. So classrooms might work for you, but if they don't, then look into the others because there's loads of options out there, guys.
Yeah. And there are options at different price points.
Yeah.
So you can go for something like Learn Signal or accountancy, which is much cheaper. There's a lot of the support they provide is really high quality, but you will not get the level of personalized support that you would do from someone like me or Tom Clendon. We work at FME, where every bit of work that the student does, I read it, I give them detailed comments. You scored half a mark for this, carry on doing it. If you added this and this, it would have been 2 marks. You've got my number and I answer any questions that you've got. So there's a whole range of kind of online, and to suit any price point and any style of study that now exists out there. And you're right, Helen, that definitely didn't exist back in the day.
Yeah, no. So yeah, research it. Obviously, ask me if you've got any questions. I don't coach or teach on any specific subject with any ACCA or CIMA student. So learn some resources over the time, the ones which are better or worse for different people. Though this is the thing, isn't it? So. Yeah. Cool, great. So have there been any other opportunities that you haven't shared with us yet that have come about since you've been qualified, to just give that extra inspiration?
When I did qualify, at that point, KPMG, if you've been reasonable in your journey up to that point, they really want to keep you, and they know that you've got lots of offers from elsewhere, because everyone gets calls from recruitment consultants and things. So I got offered some really interesting opportunities at KPMG. So I was offered to move into either transaction services or corporate finance, which was where you're advising companies around buying or selling a business and doing a lot of the work around that. I also got offered to go on secondment to Australia, or I also got offered America. They basically went, where do you want to go? We'll find a role for you in a country where you want to. Do you want to spend a couple of years sort of working and sort of traveling? And at that time, I wanted to settle down, and we were starting a family, so that didn't work for me. But I actually always look back and go, that would have been great to go to Sydney for a few years, do a little bit of work, and get paid to relocate out there. Incredible. But yeah, I mean, the career door it did open for me. The one that I decided to take was with Kaplan, and it's been incredible for me. I've done so many good opportunities. So like with ACCA, I ended up this is while I was still at Kaplan. This is the first bit of work I did for ACCA. They flew me out to India to run a train the trainer event, and I got to fly business class, and it was incredible. And I stayed in this amazing hotel. So I cannot believe they're. And I met some really interesting people and had an absolute ball. The food, the smells, it's an incredible country. But yeah, that has come because I got my qualification and then ran with it.
Yeah.
And the group of people I qualified have gone off and done all sorts of random things. So one of them is the chief financial accountant now at Harrods. And she gets a 90% discount on Harrods clothes. So she's got all these as long as it can be for work, which is a pretty loose definition. It's unbelievable. One of them started a sandwich business, and he now supplies sandwich. I mean, what has being an auditor got to do with starting a sandwich business? But he supplies sandwiches to loads of
you've got the qualified base to jump from.
Exactly. Another guy's running a hotel. He started up his own hotel. In fact, a lot of us, and I now run my own business, a lot of us have gone off and started our own companies doing various things, because the skills you learn as a qualified accountant and the variety of experience you get at different businesses stands you in really good stead for that.
Yeah, and for 3 to 5 years of studying is a really great, solid choice, but it's really worth it. It's really worth it to do that. And then you can do all these things afterwards once.
Yeah. Well, if you think about what you're demonstrating to an employer, Right, if you're doing ACCA or CIMA and having to balance work, study, and life, you're showing an employer that not only can you do these really hard exams, you can do them while spinning a plate and standing on your head. Right, you're able to balance multiple priorities and still succeed. What else does an employer want? They want someone who's going to be a motivated self-starter, who's going to get on with things and work hard, right? And you're showing all of those things if you're able to study and work and have a life at the same time.
And if you're trying to do that and failing, guys, then give us a shout, because we can help and support you, because it's possible. It's absolutely possible, and it's just about spinning different plates maybe, or putting some down at certain points and things like that. So there's solutions out there. We're here to provide solutions for sure. Oh, so that's so good. I give a lot of revision tips on LinkedIn nearly every day, and I like to be the revision geek. So I'm asking everyone what their number one revision tip is for any qualifying accountants listening.
So mine is, in the exam, you've got to imagine you're a shark, right? So fact about a shark is that if it stops swimming, it dies, right? It drowns. It needs to keep moving so that the water keeps flowing over its gills, otherwise it drowns. In the exam, if you stop moving, if you stop swimming, you will drown. Right? You've got it. So if something's hard, just move on from it, right? That's supposed to be difficult. Move on to the next thing. Keep swimming, and you will get to and you will pass. Most of these qualifications, the pass mark is kind of 50-55%. You haven't got to get everything right to pass the exam, but if you focus on the hard bit and spend ages on it, destroys your confidence, costs you loads of time, and then you miss out on all of those easy marks that are perhaps later on. So you're a shark, keep swimming.
Oh, I love that tip. And one of our joint clients told me that one actually as well. So yeah, that's good. Thank you so much for letting me interview you today, Ben. It's great to hear.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody who needs some AAA help, where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn all the time. WhatsApp me. I have a YouTube channel and podcast. So if you put ACCA Ben Wilson AAA into Google, you will be inundated with places to find me.
Good. Thank you so much for having your interview with me today. It's been really great. So thank you.
Thanks, Helen.